Magic 87.6 morning, Andrew, on the radio, talking with tech with Matthew Dickerson. Morning.
Yeah, good morning. I love talking tech, Andrew, and I assume you do as well.
Yes, you do. Now, this is interesting, Matt. Now, I know most people would buy a smartwatch when they're active because, it does steps and it does all that stuff. But it's interesting to see that shipments are actually up 12% in the last couple of months, according to Apple.
Well, according to this is an analysis from all smartwatches, so it's not just Apple, and this is in the first quarter of the year. Apple does lead the way. They shipped 5 million units across the world in the first quarter of this year. And so they're up to about an installed base of 70 million people at the moment. So they're certainly leading the way. But there's some competitors coming along and they're stealing a bit of that Apple market share away, which I think is good for the market in general. You don't want someone out there being too strong in the market. And so Huawei seem to be about number 2 at the moment. They've just snuck up past Samsung into number 2 spot at the moment. Apple still leads the way as the number 1 smartwatch across the world, but Huawei's number 2. Then you've got Samsung number 3 across the world, and so they're still going quite well. And again, Samsung probably is limited to a little bit to people that have a Samsung phone. It's not essential, but most people that buy the Samsung watch have got the Samsung phone. Garmin sit at number 4 across the world, and then Fitbit, which I kind of don't really call a smartwatch. It is so focused on being a Fitbit rather than being a generic smartwatch, but they still fit into that smartwatch category, and they're at number 5 at the moment. So again, a bit of movement around there. I can see some more strength occurring from Huawei. I think they'll keep stealing a bit of that Apple market share away, but Apple still sits there fairly solidly at number 1 across the world at the moment.
I didn't even know Huawei did a smartwatch.
Yeah, look,
this is news to me.
A lot of things you see from Huawei, it's not that big in Australia, but Huawei in terms of China, very big. And some of the Asian nations, Huawei, both phones and smartwatches, are much bigger than they are here in Australia. Obviously, there's that little bit of distrust with Huawei across some countries, including Australia. So they don't seem to have taken off as well in some of those countries as they have in some of the Asian countries.
Yeah, one of my mates has got a Huawei phone. He swears by it. He reckons so. They do some really good stuff, but obviously there's that whole China kind of backlash thing going on at the moment. But in our household, it's a Garmin household. That's what my wife uses.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, she loves a Garmin watch. I think it's because it's universal, Matt. You know what I mean? You can hook it up to the Samsung, and then you can use it on an iPad. You can do all that. I think that's the appeal with it. But I don't have a watch. My wife tries to buy me one constantly. She goes, "I should get you one." I go, "Why? There's a clock on my phone."
That's right. And one of the things that's great now, I think, with some of the watches that are available, you have got the ability to use them independent of your phone to still make phone calls and to still receive messages. So that's been a huge change. And obviously Samsung and Apple have led the way in that particular area. It adds $5 a month to your phone bill, but it gives you that convenience. If you're just ducking up to the supermarket or if you are doing some exercise, you don't have to worry about taking your phone with you. So I think that's a huge advantage.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, apparently, according to ScoMo, we're under attack, but look, what kind of attack and what does it mean for us?
It's certainly a different looking attack. If you would have said that you're under an attack from another country 40 or 50 years ago, you'd expect to see planes in the air and boots on the ground, as the expression is. But this attack, and I think the next world war, in fact, who knows, we might be in the middle of the next world war as we speak, but the next real world wars will probably be fought out by some people in dark rooms, in bunkers underground maybe, sitting at computer terminals. And if you can bring a nation's economy to a grinding halt, then you've brought the nation to a grinding halt. So this particular cyber attack that we're under at the moment is certainly based on government organisations, but it's also focused on large economic operations in Australia, large private businesses in Australia. So if you could take out, for example, telecommunications operators, banks, then you don't have to worry too much about the government because you've brought the whole economy to a grinding halt. And that's where the government's really putting out the warnings now. They're saying that they're looking after the government departments, trying to make sure that they're immune from those cyber attacks. But they're also making a plea to all businesses to make sure that those businesses are stopping any sort of cyber attacks as well. So it's an interesting time. Obviously, we don't know definitely who's instigating these attacks. We can make some fairly good assumptions. And there's probably only a few state foreign governments that basically have the capabilities to launch an attack like this. They obviously, places like China, Russia, North Korea, even Iran, have got the capabilities for these sort of attacks. So you can probably narrow it down pretty quickly as to who's got the capabilities, and then maybe some of the actions that our government's taken fairly recently might point the finger in one direction in particular. But I'm not going to go there, Andrew. I'm not going to go and accuse some other organisation from another country of launching these attacks.
No, I'm not going to make any assumptions either, Matt, even though there was going to be a joke about Iran's capabilities in a chook shed with a 56K modem, because that's what I would have assumed Iran's internet would have been at the moment. But no, I didn't say anything like that. I know where I'm good.
I know you're good at offending other states around this nation, and they probably take it in good
I'll
fun.
stick to my own. I know I'm safe.
That's
you know
right.
what I mean?
Yeah, good idea.
Now, the International Space Station, apparently, look, we're eventually going to get to the point where you might be able to visit it, but who's going to take us there? There's a couple of people vying for the turn to take it, isn't there, Matt?
There are a few organisations, which sounds crazy, that the people who are fighting it out there to be the travel agent to take us to the International Space Station. I like the idea of it. I think it's pretty cool. And Virgin Galactic have now just inked a deal with NASA for some private trips to the ISS. Now, as we saw, Elon Musk, SpaceX just launched, and they launched with real astronauts to go to the International Space Station. But this is talking about taking you and I to the International Space Station. I'm not sure about the cost, but I can't imagine it's quite as cheap as a trip to London, maybe. I think there's a few more dollars involved. And I'm assuming they'll also have some fairly rigorous testing processes in place. The last thing they want is someone to get up to the International Space Station and find that they've got, diabetes or about to have a heart attack, or probably not the same medical facilities there. It probably wouldn't look that good for someone to have a major illness on their first trip up there.
Yeah.
So I imagine there's some pretty good rigorous testing that'll be involved with. But at least at the start, we've got this deal that's been signed where private people, they call them private astronauts, but does it just mean you're an astronaut because you've been to space, or do you have to actually go through some processes to become an astronaut? But basically, Virgin Galactic may well be the first company that'll take private people up to the International Space Station.
I was amazed. Discovery a couple of weeks ago, they re-showed the SpaceX launch. And of all the people they had on the broadcast, they had Katy Perry on. Don't ask me why. But apparently Katy Perry has a ticket with Virgin Galactic to go up into space. She's apparently a big space nerd. I'd love to be on the same flight as Katy Perry.
That might be something in the vetting process. When people buy a ticket, they might say, I want to know who else is going to be in that same flight. Andrew Andrews? No, I'm not on that flight. Thanks very much.
No.
But it is interesting because Virgin Galactic were selling tickets some time ago for people, and it was a deposit for people to basically go along and be on that trip. Maybe Katie's already bought her ticket.
Yeah, it could have. But you know what? Considering it's so confined on the International Space Station, can you imagine the size of the gift shop? People will just be, they get on a Yelp review and go, flight was great, experience was awesome, gift shop sucked, too small, not enough stock.
That's right. And no food. No food there. I wanted to buy some chocolates and some cola there and couldn't get it.
Yeah, I wanted to buy the T-shirt that said, I went to the International Space Station, all I got was this T-shirt. They didn't even have that one in stock.
That's right.
Yeah. Now, Twitter, I don't know. I've seen a lot of people that have been bagging on Twitter lately. Matt, have you still got your Twitter account?
Yeah, I still use Twitter, and it's something there that I think it's often useful for news organisations to get right to the heart of it. And it's actually quite amazing how many news stories I see that have various quotes and various screenshots of different people's Twitter accounts. And it's almost easy to be a journo these days. You just go and look at some Twitter feeds and just post them into a story. I'm sure there's a bit more of a scrutiny that goes through than that. But it's going to be even harder to do that in the future because Twitter's now introduced voice tweets. They love the number 140. Obviously, it used to start off with 140 characters. Now it's 280 characters. But these voice tweets are limited to 140 seconds. And the real challenge here is how the moderators might actually start to look at this. Now, they've got some pretty clever AI that looks at the text, and if someone's putting information out there that they shouldn't be, whether it be inciting violence or basically incorrect information, Twitter's AI can basically have a look at that and put some warnings on there, as they've done with the president recently, or whether they can just take it down. But with audio, I'm just not sure whether the AI is going to be clever enough to listen to that audio and to basically take that information that is basically going against Twitter's policy. So another interesting twist in the way social media gets information out there.
I'm sorry. Hasn't Facebook already got this function? I got mates who send me voice messaging all the time via Messenger on Facebook.
Yeah, and they have the same challenge.
Yeah, I know, right? I know. I had a mate of mine the other day, instead of typing me a message, just recorded it. I was like, I can't be bothered. It's too hard. I talk for a living. I'll just type a reply back. And when people do that, they just look at you and go, it just paints you in such a different light when you've had to type to a verbal message. But anyway.
The confusing part, I think, for people is there are so many different ways to receive and send messages now. It's hard to say which is the best way to do it and what other people are using. So with all the different social media mechanisms, and then you start to combine voice with text and people send video messages as well, it's so hard to know which is the best way to use. And in fact, there's no best way. There are a variety of ways, but keeping track of your messages, that's the real challenge, I think, at the moment.
No, absolutely. Absolutely.
One thing I thought was interesting with this is that we have that limit of 140 seconds that I mentioned. And so I thought that's good. So people have got to say what they've got to say in a bit over 2 minutes. That's great. But if you go over your 140 seconds, it basically just gets a chained tweet. I don't know if there is a limit. I don't know whether it says finally after 3, 4, 5, 10 tweets, it says, no, you've had enough now. So you can basically make the message, as I know at this stage, almost as long as you like, and they'll just keep adding those tweets together.
Yeah, right. Because of the time limits now, everyone's going to sound like an old 1960s disc jockey, because to get in 140 seconds, everyone's going to have to talk like this. And then all of a sudden, no one's going to understand what you're going to be saying. And then all of a sudden, it's going to be, you're just going to get a reply going, what?
That's right. A bit like the terms and conditions at the end of a TV ad.
That is exactly right. All right, now the biggest tech news of the week is Apple. They had their World Developers Conference, and that kicked off Tuesday morning our time, which was yesterday. Now, some major announcements here from Tim Cook, isn't there, Matt?
Yeah, I was up at 3 a.m, of course. I assume you were as well. Major development like this. And this is the interesting one because it was the first ever virtual conference that Apple's run. They run their Worldwide Developer Conference each year around about this time. Obviously, this one, there were no people there. And one thing I found very eerie during the announcements, normally it used to be Steve Jobs, of course, now it's Tim Cook comes on stage and they make their major announcement and the crowd goes off and they cheer and everyone's excited about it. And there were times during the presentation where I was waiting for that cheer, but there was nothing. What I did notice during the presentation was it was a very slick presentation because it was all pre-recorded. So none of it was live because it didn't need to be. But getting down to some of the announcements, I'll run through a few of those ones as briefly as I can. There was a lot in it. I'll try and pack up the 2-hour keynote presentation into about 2 minutes if I can. But basically iOS 14, the new operating system for the iPhone, which will be out around September this year. They always call it fall in America. I hate when they call it fall because fall means different things in different parts of the world. Just say a month. Like, how hard is that? But anyway, I'll get off my high horse on that one. Basically, they've got a newly designed home screen. You've got an app library that tries to organise your apps because there are so many screens. You end up with your apps on there now. They've got new widgets. The widgets that used to sit off on the left-hand side can now be resized and they can be placed on the home screen. So you can have, for example, the weather or your stock market or the latest news sitting there in a widget on your home screen. So I think that's a great addition. You'll also have a smart stack associated with that, where those widgets can change throughout the day. So it might be giving you the weather first thing in the morning, and then it changes to your calendar throughout the day, and then at night time it might give you some news that you might want to see. The other one I really liked was picture-in-picture. So you can be watching a video and you see a message come through, so you can just drop the picture of the video into a smaller screen, move that around somewhere on screen, and then basically take care of your message or whatever you might need to do, and then go back to your video while it's still been playing the whole time. So that's quite a nice little feature. And again, that relies on the power of a modern smartphone. So that's something that we've known about for a long time, picture-in-picture, but the phones just haven't been powerful enough in the past to be able to support that. And I think that's probably the main reason that's been held back. A new Translate app. I use an app at the moment to translate through different languages if I'm traveling around the world, but this will be built into the operating system. So that's a big change and probably will hurt a lot of other apps out there that have been basically doing that translation. We move on to Maps. Google Maps has been better than Apple Maps for some time now. Apple Maps, just excuse me, I'll get a drink of water here.
No, that's all right.
Apple Maps is trying to break up the ground there. They finally introduced cycling, and that's something that Google Maps has had for a long time, where Apple Maps hasn't. So you can actually do your cycling route now. And one thing I really liked is an EV route. So you can basically, your app can know how much charge is in your car. It can know where you're trying to get to and what charging stations there might be along the way, so it can stop and charge you along the way and basically direct you there. And that's a bit of an indicator about where the world's headed with vehicles. While we're on vehicles, we've also got a digital version of car keys. Now, car keys, at the moment, many people carry them in their pocket and they walk up to their keyless entry car, and that works fantastic.
Oh, no, you're not going to put the phone up next to the car now, are you, Matt?
Phone next to the car, that'll let you into the car. Once you get in the car, you just need to have the phone in the car and you'll be able to use the car. But it gets better than that. If I want to lend you my car, I can send you a set of digital car keys which can be limited for a time frame. So I can lend you my car for a day or an hour or whatever it might be. But I can also restrict what you can do in that car, where you can go, how fast you can go, and most importantly, keep track of where you are. So when you give it to your kids, you can restrict all those things and keep a track on where they might be. So that's a really nice feature. That'll only come with certain car manufacturers. They demonstrated with a BMW during the keynote, and there'll be different manufacturers that they'll tie up with there as well. App Clip is the last one, just a small app rather than download a whole app. If you just want to buy a coffee from a coffee provider, rather than download a whole app, you'll have App Clip. And App Clip will use Apple Pay and your Apple details to log you in automatically rather than have to go and create your own username and password for it. Very briefly, a couple other ones. iPad OS, some improvements there, better search facilities. Apple Pencil is now of more use. Apple Pencil allowed it to translate handwriting into text in any field that is a text field. So that makes it a bit easier. AirPods have got some advantages. AirPod Pros have now got spatial awareness. And probably one of the things that people have been waiting for a long time, we talked about watches previously, the Watch OS 7 basically now can allow you to track your sleep. And this is one area that I think some of those other smartwatches on the market have had a bit of an advantage over the Apple Watch, but tracking sleep and making sure you're getting better quality sleep is really important. So that's a big change as well. And the biggest change from a hardware perspective is that the Mac will now use its own Apple processors. They've been using Intel processors for some time, and Intel would be devastated by this. This just took away several million sales a year from Intel because Apple will be making their own processors from the Macs that will be released from about the end of the year. So that's a huge bit of news from a hardware perspective. All the rest of it is a software direction, if you like, or some different changes in software.
As a Mac user, I'm kind of worried about that, Matt, because obviously the Mac that I'm running now is getting a bit old, and it takes you a couple of years to kind of consider a new Mac purchase. And I don't know. I remember what Macs used to be like back in the day when Apple used to make their own chips. Back in the early Macs, they were terrible.
So it is interesting because Intel obviously focuses on making chips, so you'd think they do a pretty good job, given the fact that it's their only job in the world to do. But Apple believe they can do it better with their own chips, and they demonstrated how fast their new computers will be, their new Macs will be with their own chips. So time will tell whether this is a good move or not, but I'm sure Intel is probably not that happy about losing that many sales a year.
Yeah, no, I love my Intel Mac. I think it's a great machine. But it'd be interesting to see what comes out of that. But look, Apple, they're only 5 years behind everyone in some things they do. And nice to see they're finally caught up with the world.
Yeah, look, one of the other things that I thought was interesting in their Apple Watch is they've got automatic detection when you wash your hands. And a timer will start. And by the time people get this OS on their watch, we may well be through COVID-19 and won't need to worry so much about washing your hands for so long. But again, they're trying to address some of the concerns around the world with COVID-19.